The Black Death didn't just wipe out millions. It dismantled entire ways of seeing. Religious devotion, economic ambition, even human emotion itself were reshaped by overwhelming mortality. The disturbing images left behind still whisper about that shift. What you're about to see is not comfortable. It's a visual record of how societies replaced ritual with trenches and empathy with terror, before slowly learning to reverse that order again. These 10 examples reveal how the plague carved itself into the very language of art, leaving us chilling snapshots that carried forward for centuries. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Number 1. Plague Doctor Masks. A mask with a beak-like nose once stood as the uniform of the plague doctor. Its strange outline looked like something made for the stage, yet it carried the weight of fear. To an outsider, the costume seemed bizarre, even foolish, but inside homes stricken with plague, it was a final chance at survival. The beak was not decorative. It was stuffed with herbs, vinegar-soaked sponges, and spices thought to trap poison from the air. The figure of a masked doctor moving through the streets became a warning more than a comfort. This costume signaled a house touched by death rather than healing. Over time, the mask slipped from medicine into myth. It stopped being about science and became instead a ritual of protection. Today, it survives as a haunting symbol, long after the theory behind it disappeared. Number 2. Mass burial pits. Imagine streets so emptied by sickness that the dead outnumbered the living. Bodies were carried not to candlelit chapels but to open earth, lowered without names or farewells. The quiet was heavier than any sermon. Cemeteries could no longer cope. Coffins, once the mark of dignity, gave way to trenches dug in crowded fields. Here, chroniclers describe corpses laid side by side, stacked in layers like abandoned goods, a sight that stripped death of ritual. In Florence and Pisa, accounts speak of pits filled faster than churches could consecrate ground. Priests worked at a pace that erased sorrow, and memory itself seemed rushed. These graves became the stark emblem of despair, anonymous, practical, and harsh. What remains is the unsettling truth that, for a time, society saw its dead less as souls to honor and more as burdens to bury. Number 3. The Danse Macabre. A strange parade once filled church walls, skeletons tugging the living into their ranks. Kings, beggars, and priests all joined hands in this grotesque march. The image carried no privacy. It was mourning turned outward, staged as if on a public stage for all to see. Called the Danse Macabre, the cycle spread across Europe in the late medieval centuries. It showed death as judge and equalizer, reducing crowns and robes to the same crumbling dust. Inside dark chapels, frescoes revealed skeletons tugging merchants, bishops, and paupers alike into their endless dance. These murals carried a warning. Fortune, privilege, or learning made no shield. Everyone eventually joined the line. Instead of a single tragedy, the Danse Macabre presented an ongoing disaster. Death repeating itself endlessly, like a grim performance meant to remind entire communities that mortality was always waiting. Number 4. Victims with buboes. This image captures a plague victim marked by dark swellings on the skin, the dreaded buboes. They appeared as large, blistered lumps, usually deep under the arms, along the neck, or at the groin. To the eye, they were both wound and omen, the body itself carrying the sign of disease. For centuries, people read these growths not just as medical symptoms, but as tokens of guilt or judgment. Religious writers placed heavy meaning on the sight. Illustrations from physicians highlighted the blackened, painful bulges to guide diagnosis, while sermons used the same imagery as a teaching tool. Each depiction pressed the same truth. Those swellings made death visible. They blurred the distinction between a living body and one already claimed. Onlookers had no escape from this reminder. The plague carried its record carved directly on the flesh. Number 5. The Plague in London, 1665. By the mid-1600s, plague fear had shifted into something almost journalistic. Instead of frescoes and murals, Londoners saw pamphlets and prints. Pages described houses boarded shut, each marked with a red cross, the family sealed inside under watch. Etchings showed carts pushed through narrow streets, burdened with limp shapes. Some prints even placed rats in the foreground, hinting at a hidden source of illness. The quiet of the city was recorded in diaries. Bells tolling, footsteps vanishing, whole neighborhoods hushed beneath curfew. These records gave the devastation a civic face. It was no longer only about graveyards or sermons, but about movement and surveillance, walls and doorways. The images showed disease as something a city could try to manage. In this way, London's plague foreshadowed the rise of public health, where documentation itself became part of survival. Number 6. Flagellants in procession. This image captures the sight of flagellants marching through crowded towns, their backs bare, lashes tearing skin until blood streaked down. They carried rhythm in their chants and whips. A grim procession watched in uneasy silence. To many onlookers, the act seemed part ritual and part madness. Religion turned into theater, where pain itself was expected to drive away unseen disease. These men believed their wounds could heal a community by showing repentance made real on the body. Artists of the time preserved such visions with sharp detail. Figures stooped, struck, and staggered together, both performers and penitents on a stage of stone streets. The imagery endured because it revealed a desperate bargain with the divine. Here, plague terror was not only captured in the dying, but in the spectacle of the living, forcing suffering upon themselves. Number 7. Plague and rats. Not until later centuries did artists begin to show animals as part of the story. In earlier times, plague was pictured as God's hand. But in new prints, another culprit began to appear: the rat. The shift was quiet but powerful, placing contagion in the everyday creature that lived under the same roof as humans. 17th and 18th century engravings sometimes showed dead rodents outside shuttered houses, suggesting their presence marked illness inside. A few medical drawings even went further, sketching small insects on rat bodies, a hint that fleas carried something unseen. These details edged closer to modern understanding while still wrapped in guesswork. Rats soon became uneasy symbols of hidden danger. To see one in an image was to think of disease lurking nearby. Their place in art blurred the line between superstition and science, both warning and observation woven together. Number 8. Quarantined ships and ports. Closing the gates of a harbor was more than an act of defense. In paintings and prints, it became a frozen image of collective fear, a city pausing the flow of goods and people. The sea that once promised trade and wealth now carried only suspicion. Ships at anchor turned into prisons on open water. Artists showed vessels motionless offshore, banners raised not in pride but as signals of sickness. The sight warned anyone on land that danger floated within sight but out of reach. Rules enforced the wait. Crews were kept back for a period of 40 days, a span that gave rise to the term quaranta. These measures reveal a shift in thinking, from praying for relief to regulating every movement. The port itself became stage and symbol, a borderland where fear and early governance intersected. Number 9. The Triumph of Death. Peter Bruegel, 1562. This image captures Peter Bruegel's The Triumph of Death, a canvas stretched wide with armies of skeletons advancing across every scene of human life. Towns, villages, and courts, none escape their march. Unlike earlier symbolic murals, here the allegory is dissolved. What you see is not polite metaphor, but a world crumbling in real time. The boundaries between fable and catastrophe collapse as the dead roll across landscapes once full of order. Bruegel packs the work with detail. Instruments of war lie scattered beside overturned feasts, goblets knocked over as bony hands sweep tables clean. Lovers, soldiers, and kings all meet the same end beneath an unstoppable tide. This painting was less about documenting a single outbreak and more about issuing an eternal warning. On its frozen stage, mortality interrupts every triumph, reminding viewers that no power can stand against death. Number 10. Modern photos of plague cemeteries. In recent decades, archaeologists have uncovered plague cemeteries once thought to be forgotten. Photographs taken during excavations show rows of skeletons arranged in long trenches, silent testimony beneath familiar streets and buildings. Modern city life now sits directly on top of these graveyards. These images bring the past into stark daylight. What once seemed like medieval legend is revealed in soil and bone. The camera captures not just skulls and limbs, but the sheer scale of loss, lined one after another under urban foundations. Sites in London, Florence, and other places have exposed these trench-style burials. Modern photography makes the discovery feel immediate, not distant. The evidence is tangible, clear, and unsettling. What was once painted on church walls or written in chronicles now lies exposed. In these photographs, myth returns as fact, preserved in earth and frame. Plague imagery began as terror, shaped by visions of wrath and divine punishment. Masks, pits, and skeleton dances froze fear into forms that communities could see and recognize. These pictures gave shape to panic, but also repeated its weight, passing it along to each new generation. Over time, the lens shifted. Prints of rats, accounts of quarantined ships, and records of sealed homes carried another message: resilience, regulation, and memory. What started as symbols of chaos slowly evolved into tools of order. Art became a way to manage mortality, to face the inevitable, and it still serves that role today.